Hey, y'all, now this episode covers more ground than anything I've written so far. And every single time I wrote it, for me, the temptation was to rush it. The plight of the writer, to summarize, to just get to it, to just say, yeah, summer happened and keep it moving. I couldn't do that because nothing about that summer was a summary. Every scene had a specific weight, a specific smell, a specific face even. Back then, our school year ended in May and began again in early September. I want to mention the report card scene and how it almost didn't make it in. I wrote it and then I sat with it for a while. All those old doubts and feelings came rushing back into my body. I remember in that moment feeling like, wow, the mother really doesn't care and is not invested in Starlet and her lessons at all. Writing that scene out on paper meant admitting that out loud. And prior to me starting this series, I hadn't quite admitted that before. So going back to that moment was challenging. Starlet stood there waiting after everything. That's the detail that almost got cut out, and that's exactly why it stayed. I just want to say, moving forward, anytime as a writer there's an inclination for me to hide a detail, that for me and my body is an indication that I need to put it in. I need to share it, because that feeling of ick for me, it's scary. Sharing any of this, quite frankly, is scary, but it's a memoir. Oh, look, people are flying overhead. Hello. That line about the honey bun made me laugh for a solid 4 minutes when I wrote it. Because sometimes the only honest way through something devastating is also to acknowledge how absurd it really is. Starlet was failing algebra because she was, using my nurse language, malnourished, and was running on corner store sugar and unprocessed everything, as well as fumes. She thought that she was simply bad at math and didn't consider, because how could she at that age of 15, that maybe it wasn't her, but rather her environment that fostered this inability to not succeed as well as she could have. The traffic stop sign scene is the one that surprised me the most in the writing. When I started, I thought it was a scene about Heather. By the time I finished it, I considered that maybe, possibly, it's also about Starlet and what she had quietly built in her head, and what happened when the reality of a friend versus the fictitious version that she created in her head walked in and sat down in a beanbag chair. Writing about Irvin was fun, and we'll see more of him later. Every line that he says to Starlet sounds like a compliment. I wrote it that way because that's how he really spoke. So she's at the table, clipping coupons, cigarette in her mouth, very pregnant. It wasn't until after writing this one that I realized that the mother is watching her daughter outgrow her in real time. Not only did the English honors grades surprise her against her will, she didn't even know that her daughter was taking honors classes. You gotta remember, back in season 1, when the mother kept Starlet home for nearly a month to facilitate a larceny scheme and needed a co-conspirator. This mother is so unplugged from what's actually happening with her daughter that it never occurred to her to inquire about her school until she had evidence in front of her of her daughter's success while she was reading her progress. There's lots of planes flying ahead. Hello. That line, "You like escaping." I don't know if that was a random observation or recognition. I wonder if the mother saw something in that kitchen that she didn't have language for, and what came out instead was barely, or go on, sit down somewhere. Now, Miss P was the change agent for Starlet. She, along with her daughter, walked into a school office for a child that wasn't hers and debated with a secretary who had been applying the same policy for however long she had been working there and was perfectly comfortable continuing to do so. A lot happened off the page relating to that event between Heather and her mother that never really fully got expressed to Starlet. So Heather, when she arrived at the greenhouse to hand Starlet her schedule and her locker information, had already made a decision about the next phase of their friendship. The locker she got for Starlet that was not near hers or Jeanette's or Becky's or the rest of the crew. That didn't happen by accident. Now, what Heather said was, my mom was really mad and gave Starlet her packet. So you can ask, oh, what was her mom mad about? Was it the way the school handled it? Was it the fact that she was placed in a spot to advocate for this child? Was she mad at Starlet's mother for not helping her? Great questions. Here's the thing though. Heather and Miss P showed up, and based on the end game, it cost Heather something. Everything Irvin said on that porch was technically a compliment. You smart for real. You different. Most pretty girls don't be knowing all this extra stuff. Then the car rolls up and slows down at the curb, and the dude gave him a nod, and Irvin sent the nod back. Starlet clocks it and immediately starts with rapid fire questions that he deflects by turning Starlet's questions into a problem. You always investigating stuff. You act like the police. By the end of that summer, Irvin had already decided which parts of himself that he would share with Starlet. There was something there that was off, and Starlet voiced that uncertainty. However, she is 15 and curious, so she led with her curiosity. Here's one, the biology grade. There was 1 point between passing and repeating an entire year besides people that were younger than her, carrying yellow notebooks and pretending to not notice the whispers. I gave you that intentionally. I also gave you a title called Superwoman. Do with that what you will. Another one was Keith at the door when Irvin arrived and him yelling. What you have to know about Keith is that he's the youngest thus far, and he's always there in the front. And he's the exact opposite of Lil Lewis, who prefers the background. I want you to keep that also in mind for later. The last image of this episode was the parking lot scene with the bass rattling behind Starlet and sophomore year opening up before her. And that last question.
Who exactly was I becoming in order to survive this place?
This may or may not be a turning point for her. One of many turning points. I mean, it's only the second year. Starlet showed up to sophomore year in red lipstick, riding in a car with spinning rims, better shoes, and she stood in that parking lot and asked herself, who am I becoming? I don't know if a superwoman in real time realizes that she is one. What do you think? All right, so the beginning of sophomore year has a name on it now. Starlet has brand new locker neighbors, and that newer, colder voice that Starlet felt in that parking lot is about to experience even greater tests. This is the year that she starts making big choices. And as is life, some of them are going to cost her. Okay, I have questions for you. Was there ever a moment where being right about something cost you a friendship? And what did you do with it? Who was your Heather? Who was the person that stood up for you and quietly, without saying a word, also showed you exactly where the line of no return was? Has anyone ever said something to you that sounded like a compliment but actually landed like a cage? Do you recall how long it took you to name what it actually was? Drop your answers below. And if you want to bring the conversation live, let me know. I'd love to chat with you. If you haven't already, subscribe to my Substack. That's where this series lives. Go subscribe and support the work. And if you find yourself liking what you read, por favor, share it with a friend. Thanks for watching, but more importantly, thank you for reading. I'm NC LENNOX, and I'll see you next time. Bye.